We likewise, the approach is the facilitator presents the concepts and what literature says. But again, there is a case study that has been picked up, and that case study is the one that we're going to criticize, to critically look at, with the hope that we will find that the proposal either fits or is in line with what literature requires, or it is at tangent. When it is at tangent, we make recommendations on how the gaps that we've identified can be closed. And I believe this approach gives us, as a team and then as a group of researchers, to master the concept, even to identify challenges. If something is of challenge and we don't know, we do further research and deliberate time and again. And as I said earlier on, we are allowed to have one-on-one interactions. And this, I think, will become more required when these researchers have their draft proposals. And if they want to confirm and ascertain if they're en route, then they will bounce it with us. That is when we will make comments and advise where necessary. I want to move to the next slide of introduction. And this first slide is to introduce us on what a research proposal is. And we see here in the slides that it is referred to as a project planning document. Sometimes, I think in earlier engagements, I don't know if it was with the master's and the doctoral students, there were some who were asking if a research proposal can be considered as a plan. And I think I had an oversight of this statement, which says project planning, because I was not straight up with the response. I did not say it is indeed a plan, but I did say it is equivalent to a plan, because at the end of the proposal, you also show stages. In some universities, they will request you to show the work plan and the stages. And we are aware that when we dealt with the first thing, we were told that research process is a step-by-step process. And if in the research proposal, we detail those steps, it means indeed we are planning on how research project will be executed. So it is indeed a plan. But what it contains and what it addresses, it should have a topic that has to be studied. That is why each research proposal should have a topic that has been selected. It should have objectives, research design, and the research methodology, as well as timeframes and the resource. That is where the part of planning is well given effect. We also hear that the research proposal is both a backward and a forward-looking document. This is precisely because it contains the research problem and the research design, which are about the present. A later statement down the slide indicates that this might be written in the present, because a research problem will indicate the researcher's thinking about the research work that has to be executed. So that is written in the present form. as well as this research design. But sometimes there is somewhere where we can use past tense to write some of this, particularly the research problem and the research design. But as we look forward, the methodology and the time frames and the thesis are the things that are yet still to follow, and they cannot be written in the present. They can be written in the future, because we will always say that data will be collected using data. Then will is always reflecting the future, and the time frames will indicate on this month or on this date I will. It does not say I have or I am. So it shows that a person is preparing to implement something in future. And the thesis, we know, is actually the results and the output from the research process, which is after we shall have operationalized our research proposal. So, but over and above, there are three important aspects for which a research proposal is used for. One is communication, two, plan, and three, contract. And by communication, we mean that the proposal communicates the researcher's intent or the student's intent of undertaking a research project. So that is where, in bracket, I've put approval that this research proposal is submitted to the institution. And in the institution, you've got a lot of gatekeepers. You've got the study leader. You also have the department under which the study leader is working. You also have a structure called the ethics committee that has to sanction, to give approval that indeed when this project is executed, it will not impact on the respondents detrimentally. So this is the important role that the research proposal is used. Again, we're arguing whether it is a plan or not with other colleagues, but it's also a plan. And that is why we said earlier on, it has got steps that have to be followed. So it is how you plan in the proposal or through a proposal, what you will do. It provides a background through the research problem, through the research design, but it also indicates what will happen as a plan. And it eventually becomes, once it is approved by the institution or the supervisors and the ethics committee have approved the project, the proposal becomes a binding contract between the researcher and the study leader, and it becomes a point of reference. You agree to execute a project based on the terms of reference contained in the research proposal. So the methodology that will be followed will be in the research proposal, the manner in which data will be analyzed, and everything, all the chapters will have been proposed in the research proposal. So it becomes a contract, and it will always be referred to between the study leader and the researcher. Here, I'm going to repeat some of the things that I mentioned in earlier slide by again indicating the standard components of the research proposal. The first aspect, we have already said it should have a topic, but here we say it is a title. Now I want to emphasize something, and this is the reason why I've put provisional in bracket and in red in front the working title. This is precisely because a title can only be confirmed at the end of the study. If we collect data and we find that data does not confirm the title that we've given to the research project, we can change the title and give it and give this research project a new title. So this is the reason why I've put provisional. But the research proposal should also address the background or the rationale. It should have preliminary literature study, and people are saying it's optional. This is some literature that I've consulted. But I want to again emphasize that it is actually virtually impossible for anybody else to work on the research proposal without having done preliminary literature study. Because the context, if in order to put the study or the research project into context, you need to understand a lot of things. You need to know what work has been done under the topic, how much is still outstanding, and therefore that constitutes a gap that should be closed. And on that basis, there is a recommendation and there is an opportunity of identifying a research topic that will close the gap that is there. So therefore, that optional that I've put there in bracket, I don't necessarily agree with it, even if I have it here. Then the research proposal should also have the problem statement or the research problem. It should have the research design and the approach of the study, objectives or the purpose, as well as the hypothesis. Further, it should have the methodology or research methods, timeframes, and limitation of the research. Sometimes other people do not put timeframes, but even limitations, some people do not put these. But these are important aspects of the research because they then indeed show that the research proposal is a plan. It should have the time of start and the time of end because it is also a project. It must outline chapters so that we know the specific aspects that each of the chapters will address. Then eventually it should have references. Okay, thank you very much. We are going to move now. And the reason I put a case study here is that now we're going to start engaging on the case study. And when you see the red is mainly what literature says. And then I will try to respond to what literature says through, I will have written in black. And that would be some extracts, some samples of specific sections from the proposal that was prepared for the case study. And the case study is establishment of catchment management agencies, a case study of organizational design. So we might have used this case study when we were dealing with theme 1, where we were looking at focus groups as a method of collecting data. Now, let us look what is required in the background if we are to address this section in the research proposal. It must begin by contextualizing the study. It relates to how the researcher comes to decide on the topic and the relevance of the topic, as well as its importance. What are the main reasons, theoretical or empirical or practical, that led the researcher to decide on the specific topic? All these are what should be addressed in the background. The background should state the overall aims and goals of the study as they crystallize during the preliminary reading by the researcher and thinking about the problem. The background should show how the researcher's preliminary reading in the literature led to a refinement and focusing of the specific ideas that are there in the background. Now, this is the background that has been extracted from the research proposal, from the topic on the establishment of catchment management agencies. And again, I've just extracted some of the important points. I did not take everything because the background section was long. So I only, for the purpose, for practical purpose, only to demonstrate that indeed background should cover specific aspects that are recommended by a lot of authors. And part of the background had this information. The Bill of Rights provides for the protection of the environment, which includes water, and guarantees the right of access to water by the South African citizens. And I want to say something here at this stage, Busisiwe, that you see that I refer to the Bill of Rights. I've done so because the Constitution is the fundamental law of the country. And therefore, it is a basis of most of our legislation in the country. This includes legislation on water. So the water law has to give effect to the constitutional provision. So the constitutional provision, especially under the Bill of Rights, then it says the environment must be protected so that for the well-being of the people. But it also guarantees the right of access to water by all the South Africans. So the National Water Act and many more other policies that followed are based on this, and they give effect on this. So it is important to consider this legislation, and particularly the Constitution, because it is the basis of many of our legal processes. So prior to 1994, management of water was centralized and later decentralized to CMAs at regional level after 1994. The catchment management agencies are governed by the boards that appoint chief executive officers who in turn appoint other staff members. This was all contained in the background. Further, organization theory can be defined as the study of organizational designs and organizational structures and the relationship of organizations with their external environment. There are two important aspects here of discussion. It is the catchment management agencies, it is water, as well as the organizational theory. This is because the heading talks about the establishment of catchment management agencies. And it also says it is through from an organizational point of view. So if I don't say anything about catchment management agency, then I'm not giving effect to the topic that I've identified. And if I don't say anything about organizational theory, then I'm still not giving effect to the heading. I'm not supporting the heading because the heading says an organizational perspective. So wrapped up from my background, I capture things that ensure that I give effect to the research topic. So I must not be at tangent, I must not go away. I must read these things. In other words, my literature did deal, the section should deal again, the next one, with the statement of the research problem or the research question. And it's the literature says, the researcher will have to be totally convinced and be able to convince that the researcher's prospective supervisors, the researcher must convince the prospective supervisors that the problem that she or he wants to research is indeed a researchable one. This is very, very important because the supervisor must agree with the researcher or with the student that this is the point of focus of the study and that the topic has been worded correctly. It is researchable, it is not vague, or it is not too big. It allows a researcher to continue with the research process. Further, the clarification of whether the research topic is a researchable problem depends largely on the extensive literature review of what the researcher might think of as a researchable problem. This is the reason why earlier on I emphasized the fact that preliminary literature is important. And it doesn't only have to be preliminary. If I can do preliminary intensive study, it is also good. If I can do intensive literature study, it saves me, because other chapters are mainly composed of literature review. And therefore, reading a lot will not do, a researcher does not do herself or himself a disservice, but he prepares himself or herself to accomplish this work diligently, including chapter 2, which is on literature. And let us just look at the sample statement of problem with relation to the topic that I've identified as a case study. The statement of problem, some of the statements from the statement of problem reads like this. The water sector in South Africa faces the problem that there is no surplus water in the country, and that available water resources are at their limit. Chief executive officers of the catchment management agencies are currently experiencing specific problems when it comes to the management of their respective catchment management agencies. Most of the CEOs are interim. The employees of the Department of Water Affairs lodged a grievance in 2015 that stopped the CMAs or catchment management agencies from becoming operational. Whereas CMA boards are constituted by representatives of the communities and water users, they lack the necessary skills. You can hear that all these four statements are problems, or they are stating problems per se. The first one indicates that there is a problem of limited water resources. The second one shows that catchment CEOs have got problems. The third one, it shows that there is a problem, that the establishment process has been stopped, and that somebody has lodged a problem in terms of this program. Then it is also a problem. And the CMA boards do not have capacity or skills. It is a problem, and it is a challenge. So it means the statement of problem indeed was stating problems. And this is in relation with the CMAs and organizational design. With respect to the statement of problem that we just have read, that the initial research topic was the role of acting chief executive officers of catchment management agencies in South Africa. And to me, this was a real problem. As an employee of the Department of Water and Sanitation, I saw the real problem, or I experienced it. By the way, I was one of the acting chief executive officers. Then we were experiencing real problem that we were not widely accepted within the department. There were some of the individuals that did not like the arrangements of acting. Therefore, this stifled service delivery due to all the conflicts and confrontations among the acting CEOs and the other members of the department. And this is the reason why I thought this problem should be investigated. And if the inquiry was going to assist me to address this problem, it means I was going to use it as applied research. But this topic was not acceptable to the study leader. And this is precisely because I suppose the supervisor thought that the challenges that were encountered by these chief executive officers who were acting were organizational in nature or structural, or the origin of all the problems was due to the design of catchment management agencies. Therefore, the study leader proposed that the catchment management agency's establishment process be investigated from an organizational perspective. And it is only now that I feel that he might have been correct, because I know that the organizational design of the catchment management agencies or of any other organization would also affect the operation, the roles and responsibilities, and the position of the chief executive officer. the chief of executive officer is the very first employee of the organization. So if the organization is well designed, he is going to be on top there as the leader of the organization. So in other words, the organization would have a specific structural design on how people need to be appointed and what jobs need to be executed at each of the level. And it would even determine other processes, such as the span of control, how many people should the CEO supervise, how many people should the executive manager below the CEO supervise, how is the work going to be approached? Is it going to be approached in a project format, or it is going to be a specialization, or officials will be jack of all trades? All these are addressed through the organizational design. So I believe when this is being examined from the perspectives of the catchment management agencies, we're going to identify specific problems that are inherent in the organization. And if indeed the CEO were affected by how it was designed, we would be able to improve, to streamline, to ensure that those problems have been addressed. So this is how I was convinced to change my topic to the present one for which the proposal has been made. Now, after the research problem was, statement was finalized, the researcher came with a research question, which is a broader one, a principal or a primary research question, read like this: can an analysis and implementation of the principles of organizational design assist catchment management agencies to manage their respective water management areas more effectively so that a better service can be rendered to their stakeholders, which are the public? This was the principal research question. And as you are aware, the research project or the proposal might come up with a number of research questions. And as you will see later on, the research questions would assist you to actually craft the research objectives or the sub-problems, which will become the intent statements of how the researcher intends to undertake the investigations. In other words, all the aspects that the researcher would want to address during the research project. So, apart from the principal question, I went down to develop sub-questions or specific questions that are supportive of the principal question. And they read like this: on which theoretical principles is the phenomenon organizational design founded within the context of organizational theory and studies? That's sub-question number one. Number two, what is the history of the establishment of catchment management in South Africa, and which legislation lays the foundation for water management? Third, what is the current situation of the CMAs or the catchment management agencies, as well as the proto-CMAs and their chief executive officers in South Africa, with the focus on 2 operational CMAs and 7 proto-CMAs? That is the third sub-question. And the fourth one reads like this: how can the catchment management agencies and their chief executive officers or interim chief executive officers be streamlined according to the theoretical principles and the results of the empirical study? So these are all the research questions that followed the statement of a problem. And by the way, these research questions should assist the researcher to address the research problem. Because we said the research problem is based on the topic. So there should be a flow from the topic and the investigation to the background, which we have read that it was indeed in line with the topic, and then from the background to the statement of a problem, from there to the research questions. And we will see that even in subsequent sections, there will be a relationship, such as the purpose or the objectives. That is where we're going now. And literature says we need also to have clearly defined purpose or objectives.
Yes, I wanted to ask in terms of the questions, right?
Yes.
I had an issue with my supervisor. Like I would send the problem, the objectives, and he would send them back. So I
Yes.
felt like some of the questions that I wanted to identify I could not put them in questions because they're not part of the research problem, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so my problems were okay. My topic is related to solar energy, right? So I
Yes.
had questions that I wanted to tackle, talking about the policies, or are there
Yes.
any policies that allow us to do certain things?
Yes.
And sorry, let me just the regulatory and policy framework and the economic consideration and the financial barriers. Since I don't have it on the objective part, on the questions that I indicated at the top, is it okay to add them at the questions for the whole section where I did with the questionnaire?
Yeah, I want to make let me discuss from the generic to the specific. And if I don't answer you, please do make a follow up. You know, I keep on emphasizing with everybody that please do not go to the field if you have not done chapter 2 and if you have not done thorough literature review. And I have seen something, and I'm not going to attack study leaders. I just have an independent opinion that study leaders would always request students to prepare questionnaires up front, even before they could finish chapter 2. Some of them even request them to even prepare questionnaires during the time of preparing a proposal. I am total against that. And I don't, and I'm not saying the study leaders who adopt that approach are wrong, but let me tell you the benefit of doing it. When you do literature research, you master every concept and you master everything. You then are highly informed. You know the in and out of the topic under investigation to an extent that you know what should be investigated. You are convinced. If there is anything under proposal that you've put and that is not worth investigating and that would not give you the specific answers that you want, you are allowed to revise the research proposal. And I tell you, when you design your instrument for collecting data, such as the questionnaire, you will not put irrelevant questions. And I tell you, even when you do your pilot study, you will find very, very few flaws, and you will revise your your questionnaire professionally with very, very minor additions. So my recommendation is, when you do your research questions, that is before the research purpose and the objectives. When you do your research questions, please base them on the research topic. Okay, let me put it this way. If you've got a principal question, your principal question is more or less is highly related to your research topic because it is about the entire study. And the entire study is what you want to achieve with the research topic. Therefore, my proposal is, with your sub questions from your principal questions, ask questions that you will turn into research objectives or sub problems. And when you do that, what you are doing is you are actually saying, if the study leader agrees with the research questions, automatically the study leader is going to accept the research purposes, the research objectives, because they go hand in hand. You just turn your research questions into objectives. And you know why you do that? Each research question and each research objective is going to constitute a chapter. And remember, when I dealt with literature, I said a chapter addresses specific aspects that are going addresses sub problems. And I've shown it when I made the presentation of the vendor culture. There, I had perceptions 4 times or 5 times. Those perceptions, all of them were research sub problems, but they ended up as aspects that were to be addressed inside the research project. And although although all of them did not stand out as separate chapters, but they stood up as separate sections in the research report. And the proposal was structured in a way that they were independent. They all have to be addressed. So in other words, if you have got your research questions, you are saying you will make sure that you will address them. And that is why your statement of intent, your research objectives actually are the results of those research questions. Do you still have a follow-up on this one, Moape?
No, it's understandable. I think I'll get it as soon as I do the chapter 2.
Yes, but you know what I want to propose to you. If you still have the challenge that you mentioned, engage me outside. You can send me the your work. Then I'm going to guide you. You see what I said? I said your number of questions, let them be equivalent to the number of objectives. And it's not a given, it's not an instruction. It's a strategy that ensures that you don't go outside the research process. You will go, your background and your questions will show you the direction that you must follow. And then your purpose. I'm moving to the next section that looks at the research objectives. And you will later on see the relationship between the research purpose and the research question, as well as the research questions and the research objectives. Now, under the purpose or objectives, this is one of the most important parts of the foundation of any study. What do you do, what you want to achieve, and why is reflected here. And what are the primary and secondary objectives? In other words, you might have one main objective, then it is followed by the ones that give effect to it. And let us see how these objectives were crafted. And you will see, if you remember, when I read here, just to have at the back of your mind the research questions that we had earlier on. And if you had forgotten, we can go to and fro to revisit them so that you can see which objective is giving effect to which question. The following are the specific research objectives of the study. To analyze and discuss the theoretical principles of the phenomenon organizational design within the context of the organizational theory. Let me show you which research question is being given effect here. It says, on which theoretical principles is the phenomenon organizational design founded within the context of organizational theory and studies? Let's go back to that research objective. The analysis and discussion of theoretical principles, there it is. You see, there is that relation because it relates to the theory of organizational design. That is sub-objective number 1. Number 2, to explore the history on how the CMAs in South Africa were established and to analyze the legislation that laid the foundation of water management in South Africa, which are going to be chapter 3, all of them. And I think they are giving effect to research question number 2. Let's look at it. What is the history of the establishment of CMAs in South Africa, and which legislation? You see, there are 2. Which legislation lays the foundation for water management? So it is legislation, and the other one is the history of CMAs. Here they are. Now, the third one, to undertake an empirical study to determine the current situation of the 7 proto-CMAs and 2 operational CMAs and the CEOs in South Africa. Let's see which one this one is responding. What is the current situation? There it is. Of the CMAs and their CEOs in South Africa with a focus on 2 operational. So the current situation will be identified through undertaking an empirical study, and which means we'll go to the field to collect data that must answer this research question. And as a result, we put an objective to undertake the empirical study by going to the field and doing all other investigations so that we can respond to that question. The last one is to make recommendations on how the CMAs and their CEOs can be streamlined according to the theoretical principles and the results of the empirical study. This is the very last one, and it gives effects to how can the CMA and their CEOs be streamlined. So I have demonstrated that there is a relationship between my research questions and my research objectives. And let me pause again here before we go to the theoretical framework. Muope and Busisiwe. Any question on the relationship between the objectives and the research questions?
Yeah, I just want a confirmation regarding the research questions correlating with the research objectives, and I see how they work hand in hand.
Okay. We are moving now to the theoretical framework. This is one of the requirements that should be contained in the research proposal. And they say this is the philosophy that underpins your research in the context of the current literature. And here I think we have to do, it has to do with organizational design, because this is the theory that we thought we would investigate CMAs against. And the leading theoretical argument says, organizational theory studies organizations to identify the patterns and structures they use to solve problems, maximize efficiency and productivity, and meet the expectations of stakeholders. That is the focus of organizational theory studies. Correctly applying organizational theory can have several benefits for the organization, its employees, and society at large. So again, we are making reference to the organizational theory. But we say organizational design itself, there is a process to design the organization. And I think this is based on the organizational theory. This is a step-by-step methodology which identifies dysfunctional aspects in the organizations, which includes analysis of the workflow, the procedures, structures, and system, with the purpose of realigning them to fit current business problems, realities, or goals, and then develops plans to implement the new changes. This is how I've described the leading theoretical arguments. And everything is about organizational theory and organizational design. And this is precisely because we're going to look at the CMA as an organization, how it is organized, how it can better be organized to improve efficiency and service delivery. The proposal should also have literature review. What literature is available, what literature is missing, and what kind of literature is available is what somebody discovers during preliminary and intensive literature review. Earlier on, and while I was showing the content of the research proposal, I had put in bracket that literature review is optional because the author that I read from said so. And I argued that I don't agree that it is optional. It is a must because you understand the research topic because you have read. You can put the study project into context because you have read literature. You can identify gaps and you can rightly say you want to study this, to investigate this topic. When you know the gaps that are there and when you know that the research topic is actually going to assist you to close those gaps. This only occurs and happens if literature study has been undertaken. Then there should also be the selection of the research methods. How will the data, how will the research project conducted? How will it be conducted? We've got different methods that we use, different data collection instruments, the manner in which data will be analyzed. All of those need to be detailed in the research proposal, so that upfront, the study leader, the organization, and the researcher do have a contract and agreement on the methods and on the how of the execution of this project, research project. The other important aspect is population and sampling. The sampling design must be addressed as well, because we must know who is going to be included in the research, so we can be able to draw conclusions better. Who will be observed and for what purpose? So there are different types of sampling designs. Then we need to choose whether they are probability or non-probability. And these are based on the rationale that each sampling design needs to support the objectives of the study, and it needs to support, it goes hand in hand with the research methods. So if I'm going qualitative, therefore even my sampling and population has to be done in support of that research methods. And let us just go now and look at all these three aspects and see how the proposal addressed them. Now, I start with the research design. Even if the research design was not indicated here in the previous slide, I think I might have said something about it when I looked at the content and the standard contents that has to be addressed in the research proposal. Now, the research design is read like this. For the purpose of this study, a qualitative research design will be used to uncover the current situation of the CMA, proto-CMA as well, and their CEOs, where some of them are interim in South Africa. So in other words, the researcher chose to use qualitative research design. Qualitative research begins with the assumptions and the use of interpretive theoretical frameworks that informs the study of research problems addressing the meaning individuals of groups ascribed to a social or human problem. So in other words, the researcher tried to explain what qualitative research design is, so that it becomes clear to the institution and to the study leader that the researcher is studied from within their communities and societies and from their point of views. So this is how the research design was explained and was presented. And let's look at how what was said about research methodology. Literature review was part and parcel of the research methodology. And I have put in bracket here that literature review was done under background. Therefore, I will not, in this presentation, present something that specifically shows that literature review was done, but suffice it to say that it has been there. That background that I presented earlier on was very long, and it included a lot of things, and a lot of information came from the literature. So my background was long. It included the rationale, it included the introduction, as well as some aspects of literature review in it. So here I won't repeat and present. But literature review was also part of the research methodology. That is the reason why it is written here, the researcher will conduct literature review in the early stages on the research process. Essentially, it will build on the existing knowledge. So we have got chapter 2 that explored literature on a number of topics, such as the history of catchment management agencies and the theory of organizational design and the processes of the theory of organization. Those constituted literature review. So it is part and parcel of the methods of that were followed in accomplishing the study. Then we also had data collecting techniques and methods. And then this is an extract which says data will be collected at the end. at the hand of unstructured interviews, focus groups, observations and analysis of legislation and official documentations and policies. Research participants will purposefully be selected. This is now the sampling design and the population. The research participants will purposefully be selected due to their knowledge on the subject matter and the experience on the activities of the CMS. In other words, how we can justify purposeful sampling is that it assists you not just to include people who would give you irrelevant information or people who do not know about the subject matter under investigation. You would target people who will assist you to achieve the objectives of the study. And these are the people who understand what CMAs are. And they should also understand the concept of organization. And let me again pause here and hear if there's any question that is to be asked with respect to what has been presented here. The research methods, data collection, literature review, and sampling design. And this is where I summarized the ethical consideration. Here I know that I did not have a very long section, but I've again ensured that what I present here is not very long. It's captured in one slide. And this is how the ethical part was presented. All participants will be over the age of 18, and no participants will be selected from any vulnerable group of people. So I know that the Constitution protects people who are below 18 in terms of their rights. So we will not prejudice them by requiring them to respond to the research interviews or questionnaire. The researcher will ensure that he works with the participants in an ethical manner, respecting them. In other words, the researcher will be respectful again and emphasis when asking questions to respondents. The research findings will be used responsibly. We will not expose the views of the people, and we would not even this is because the ethics committee, as I've indicated earlier on, is one of the gatekeepers in any of the institutions of higher learning. They've established ethics committees to preside over proposals to ensure that these do not prejudice respondents. And I do believe that they've got specific policies on that. So I wanted to comply with the policy from the Northwest University. And that is why I even went to an extent of looking at the guidelines on research ethics so that I'm guided to ensure that I don't overstep and I work within the constraints, the prescriptions. Now, there is something, and I think we're moving towards the end now of this presentation. There is something that we refer to as the study contribution. And I indicate here that in particular, if you are at doctoral or master's level, you need to indicate that you need to prove that you can make a meaningful contribution, an original contribution to the body of knowledge. This should be the significance of your studies. You must also produce unique and relevant new information within your professional if you are a researcher. I always encourage people, although some researchers and some literature is emphasizing the point that it is good to depart, when you do research, to depart from what was researched by earlier researchers so that you can continue with that. I enjoy breaking new grounds. I enjoy researching something that has not been researched before. It might be that somebody has done similar research or research of some kind in another area. Then I do it. You see, if somebody has studied organizational design of any other organization, I have to make sure, if I want to study organizational design, that I study catchment management agencies, whose design has not been studied by anybody. When I do that, I know that I will make a meaningful contribution because I will contribute as a new person. I will shed light on new perspectives because catchment management agencies operate differently from other organizations. Although they've got to comply with the general principles of organizational design, their specific role is for the management of water in a localized level. And you don't find a lot of organizations like this in the country. So they are the only ones. So when this study is completed, it is contributed in terms of the CMAs, which are the only institutions in the country. So that is why I recommend that to make meaningful contribution as a researcher, it is always good to actually find a new area and venture into that. And I've got an example here to show that you can make a unique and a meaningful contribution in your studies by citing one of my methodology chapter from one of my reports. And this was when I was studying under China University of Technology. I was doing a doctorate there and studying tourism, and I used participatory action research as a research method. And the supervisors and the co-supervisors specifically mentioned that the type of the research methods that I was using was really used in the field of tourism. So at the end of the studies, and when I handed in the research report, they acknowledged my chapter on research methodology as the one that has made a valuable contribution, a unique contribution in the body of knowledge. So it means they said in terms of the research methods, I made a contribution. So this is just an example. And this is what I'm saying. This is why I'm saying I urge people to just do things that have not been done by other people so that they can also get an acknowledgement. So let us look at how the case study that we're presenting has presented this study contribution. And this is an extract from some of the last sections of the study report. It reads like this: the study will contribute to the body. Sorry, it is not from the study report, it is from the proposal. The study will contribute to the body of knowledge of organizational studies, and more specifically on organizational design, particularly organizational design of the catchment management agencies. Second, the study will thus be of value not only to science, but also for the Department of Water and Sanitation and for the catchment management agencies and the chief executive officers who manage the catchment management agencies. So this is it is proposed that even upfront that CMAs, CEOs, and the Department of Water and Sanitation will benefit from the results because it's going to assist them in terms of organizational design. Third, the study will use organizational theories and empirical study to recommend how organizational problems of the catchment management agencies can be addressed. Remember, under the statement of problems, we also said CMAs do not have skills as a problem. And we also noted CEOs as having problems. So we are saying these recommendations will assist us in solving those problems. And we noted under the statement of a problem that the country does not have enough resources. It does not have enough water. And therefore, the catchment management agencies, whose role and responsibilities are to manage water resources at a local level, would have an enhanced capacity and will be better organized so that they manage those water resources sustainably for the benefit of the water users and the communities, as well as anybody else in South Africa. Last, the study will also contribute to theoretical principles of organizational studies. And I think in other workshops, we did indicate that we've got two types of research. We have got basic research and we've got applied research. And we said basic research will always contribute to the theoretical principles, will also contribute to the theory. But we said applied research can be done to solve existing problems, but it will also contribute to theory building. So a lot of studies will always contribute to the building of the theory. This is how I think we presented the contribution of the study, and one of it is that one of contributing to theory building. And this is the end of the presentation. And let us engage now on the entire presentation as well as the latest and the final slides that were presented. Do you feel as researchers that the presentation equips you to an extent that you will be able to finalize your research proposals for purpose, whether it is for purposes of marking or for purposes of using it to undertake mini research and compile a mini research report? Do you think so far you have got an idea of the total framework, the overall framework, and what it should contain? And do you understand those components so far that must be contained in the research proposal?
I think for me, it has contributed a lot, because now I also had an issue with the questionnaire part. And as soon as you started talking about the fact that you have the primary questions and then you then extend everything to the question, and then I understood, oh, okay, now every objective that I have has to be answered by its questionnaire. And on the other parts that you were highlighting, research designs and everything, I think I didn't have much of a challenge because it was approved, the ethical considerations. But when it comes to the study contribution, I don't know if I'm supposed to fall there because I'm currently doing my honors.
Yes, you know what should happen. Remember, a research proposal is not a project. It is a plan, by the way. It is an intent. You want to do this. And for practical purposes, you have to exercise that. Remember, once you finish your honors next year, you're going to the field to collect data and to implement a research proposal as a plan. So are they not requiring you to produce it in its entirety, to do all its sections?
Yes, we're supposed to.
Please try even to do that ethical part of it. Yeah, sorry, that contribution, because it is important.
Yes, noted.
Nothing much from my side, but yeah, I do get the framework of the research proposal. I am still in a way at the initial stages of the whole research topic. So like I do understand the questionnaires and the other aspects, but I am still finding my way around the whole research proposal and putting it together. But the presentation did help.
Now, let me also say that even if you do not have the complete research proposal, you can bounce with me, you can discuss with me aspects of the proposal or sections of the proposal, whether it be a topic, whether research objectives, whether it be research method. And I know that there's a lot of challenge in terms of research methods, research methodology. Even people that are doing PhDs, they still struggle with that one. Even some of the professors, now don't tell any professor because they will kill you and kill me. Even some of the professors, you see, I engage professors on research methods. They do tell me now, yes, let's go together. And when I see that I'm dealing with a student who has got a problem, and they tell me, and I find that I advise them, and there's different feedback from the professor. Then I ask the student to link me with the professor. You will see I engage the professor, and the results are actually surprising, very positive. I've done it in the past, and many students have succeeded because I did engage the professors. So don't fear anything, even if you are at the initial stage. And for you, Moape, if you did you start? Have you been requested to do a questionnaire?
Yes, it was part of our chapter 3.
You see, now not research questions, a questionnaire, which is a data collecting instrument, isn't it?
Yes.
What you will ask, specific questions that will be asked to respondents. If you have got problems on that one, you can still engage with me. I think we dealt with questionnaires when we dealt with data collection, with survey as data collection. There's somewhere where we dealt with interviews as well as the development of an instrument such as a questionnaire. Then we looked at how a questionnaire should be framed, be structured, and what it should contain in there. And we, although we didn't go very far, we can still go further and look at specific types of questions that must be asked, because some questions should not be biased, some questions should not be loaded, some questions are open-ended, some questions are closed, some questions, you see, need explanation, some are just, you see, like that. All those things, you see, if you still have problems, we can engage one-on-one. This also applies to you, not only to Mobe. Anywhere where you feel got challenges, engage.
Okay, noted. Thank you.
All right, and I think now we're moving towards the end of the session. If you don't have further questions, please say so, and then we can request Lindelof to stop the recording, and we can chart a way forward of what we do next and the approach.